This game against Rene, Letelier, Martner was played October 24th, 1960. Oh, let me tell you a little bit about Rene Letelier Martner before we get into the game. He was born in San Bernardo, Chile on February 21st, 1915. He passed away July 2nd, 2006 at the age of 91. International Master the year this was played. Chilean chess champion 5 times. In 57, 59, 60, 64, and 1972. Let's get right into it. D4 from Martner, knight f6, the Indian game, c4, g6, the king's Indian defense, knight c3, bishop g7, the normal variation, e4, castles, e5, and knight e8. Now f4 from Letelier, d6, bishop e3, c5 from Bobby Fischer here, pawn takes the pawn, knight c6, and c takes d6. Marked inaccurate, and you can see the marking here where it says it's inaccurate, and just below knight f3, the best move according to the bot. Pawn takes pawn, knight e4. Knight f3 is the most common move, and that's again marked here as the best move. That's what we usually see played in this line. But knight e4 in this game. Here Bobby plays bishop f5 and attacks that knight. That gets a big red X. Queen a5 being called for. And the idea of queen a5 is to facilitate a capture here. We're giving check. He interposes with his queen. We trade queens. And then we can take this pawn and pick up the next pawn after pawn takes. Now you don't have to take it right away since you have it under super attack. You can now play bishop f5 first, and after he retreats. But of course, if he retreats here, that hits your bishop, so you'll have to retreat yourself. But my point is this will fall. It's indefensible. So you don't need to get hasty back here and play this right away, because after queen takes queen, knight takes queen, now bishop c5. So be careful about that. Bobby with bishop f5 right away here, and knight g3. Okay, knight d6 being recommended. That saves the e-man, doesn't it? Saves your pawn. And of course, that would compel knight takes knight, because he's hitting this bishop again. So after knight takes knight, queen takes knight. But you don't have to trade queens here. You could play queen e8, and you should be okay. I get a star for that. Letelier with knight g3, bishop e6, and queen e7 will be played at some point. You still don't want to take this pawn. That would be a problem because, again, queen takes queen, rook takes queen, knight takes the bishop. And you've messed up your whole position. And this guy is still trapped in here. So bishop e6 from Fischer, knight f3, queen c7. Ironically, now's the time to pull the trigger on pawn takes pawn. It says queen e7 right here, which I mentioned earlier, but I would go ahead and take the pawn here. Because now, after queen takes queen, rook takes queen, bishop c5, I've got pawn takes with a hit on his knight. So I'm compensated. Of course, knight e2, knight f6, and yes, I'm giving up an exchange. But I am quite well compensated. Actually, take that with, I thought of it just after the fact. Take it with the bishop. And you've got all kinds of initiative and activity to compensate for the exchange. These guys stuck in their beds for the time being. Bobby played queen c7 here, and queen b1 from Letelier, f5 being called for. That attacks the bishop, and of course we'll have to take with the pawn. I guess we could take with the bishop. All right, he would play bishop d3 here. We can play knight b4. And after takes, we take, well, you could take our bishop here, though. And with this black king somewhat exposed, white is still fighting. Let's go back. Queen b1 from Letelier. Now pawn takes pawn, pawn f5 here. And e4 is a interesting, somewhat curious counterattack, not liked by the bot. Bishop takes f5, hitting the queen being recommended. Of course, that tears open your position again. After knight takes bishop, pawn takes knight, and queen takes the pawn. But we can attack the queen with knight d6, and after queen g4, we can hit that queen. When they retreat, we can hit the knight. Now we've got a nice open diagonal here. After the knight moves, okay, that threatens here, but we can discover a defense. Capture that, hit that, defend that. After he moves his rook, hit the bishop next, and stay on the initiative. All right, he could try a fork here. He could try to get cute, but if he does, I got check right there. All right, he can actually block with his bishop. Let's play queen e5, give up the exchange, but I'm going to actually push this pawn before taking the knight, and my compensation is tremendous. Let's go back. E4 was played by Bobby Fischer, opening the long diagonal. Pawn takes the bishop, big red X. Queen takes the pawn on E4 is the more resistant try right here. And on pawn takes the pawn, hitting the queen. Queen comes to F4. That's inaccurate. Oh, it changed it to a thumbs up. It likes taking with the bishop better. I'm just assuming that if I take with the bishop, he'll take with the knight. That's why I didn't want to play it. He'll play queen f4 here. He's not going to take this. I know this is under super attack, but that's not a good idea here because I can hit the queen, and that queen's got to stay on this diagonal to maintain a defense. So not a good pawn to grab there. Anyway, in the game, Letelier tries taking the bishop with the pawn, giving up the knight. G takes f3, now pawn f5. And white's got to worry about pawn f4, forking the knight and the bishop, because that square is already covered by our queen, isn't it? So he plays f4 to prevent f4. Now knight f6. Don't play rook f6 here and say, I'll pick up this pawn, because that just gives him time to swoop in here. And please take my pawn, because if you do, I'm pinning you to your king. So the correct move is knight f6, bishop e2 here. And of course that makes way for castling. The bot asking us to play bishop h3 to make way for castling. Right. That deters knight g4. That's why that's desired. You could also play bishop g2 here, I would imagine. Check mark. But of course the difference here is that knight g4 could be played. Well, bishop e2 was played. King's rook to e8 here. King f2. Castles, it says, is best. Doesn't feel to me like it's that much better. Castles. Black is in control either way. King f2. Rook takes pawn. And we'll get the other rook behind. Rook e1. Rook a e8. Bishop f3. Rook takes bishop. Double exclam because that's under a super attack from white. So after rook takes rook and rook takes rook, that allows king takes rook. But what a move here. In fact, pause the video and find the winning move here that's going to be awarded another double exclam. It's beautiful. So queen takes the pawn, double exclam. And the point is, look at the royal squares. That's controlled. That's controlled. That's controlled. That's controlled. These are occupied. This is controlled. And so what you do is you connect these dots. And as you can see, that forms a diagonal corridor. So if king takes queen, checkmate. Oh, wow. What a hit. And then on the other hand, and by the way, Letelier resigned here because the only other move is king f2. And that's going to lead to a checkmate. That moves into a pin. So we knight g4. That's check. And then we give knight e3. That's check. He has to move back into a pin. So we super attack the pinned piece. It's not check, but I'm threatening queen takes. So if he defends, marked inaccurate, but I'm just suggesting, we'll take advantage of the pin again, check, and on king f1, we can take this with the knight, getting ready to discover check. Now, if he says, I'll take your queen if you discover check, I'll play queen e3, threatening checkmate on the magic square. And so he has to defend. But now I can take this pawn with check, and he's only got one legal move. And that move is queen takes the knight. So I take the queen with the next check. After king e1, I will bring my bishop to access this diagonal because the king is nearly mated and there are no moves. If he plays king d1, I give him check. And that's going to be checkmate here. If he does anything else, let's just do anything else. We've got the check I mentioned, forcing him to d1 anyway, and check. And it's the same thing. It's just different. I said checkmate. Yeah, I know he can block and throw away the piece, but he's mated. So let's go back real quick and just note the brilliancy. Queen takes f4 check. And the real point is, if you take my queen, you're self-mated. Boom. Wow. The numbers are 93.4 for Fischer on his accuracy and a single game rating of 2850. That is amazing.